Welcome back to the Broadman Word, and we are continuing to look at the life of Saul, but we're getting very close to the end of his life. And as we talked about last time, he really is just a broken man. And last time he really gave in to just foolishness. Well, here, his brokenness causes him to give in to something else, and that's just pure desperation. Which, when you and I disobey the Lord, when we are confronted with our sin, and when we feel broken, we can absolutely do and say things um, that are desperate, that come off as desperate. And so I think, again, we can really learn some things here from Saul. And so we will dive into that today. So turn with me to 1 Samuel chapter 28. We're going to be looking at the whole entire chapter, but let's dive into verses 1 and 2 to set it up first. In those days, the Philistines gathered their forces for war to fight against Israel. And Achish said to David, "Understand that you and your men are to go out with me in the army." David said to Achish, "Very well, you shall know what your servant can do." And Achish said to David, "Very well, I will make you my bodyguard for life." This goes back to chapter 27, which we didn't look at because Saul's not mentioned. But back to chapter 27, where David goes to Philistia and lives there for a time. And so it's interesting to see that as the context for what Saul does here. So the Philistines are ready to go to war against Israel. Obviously, the Philistines and the Israelites have already had their conflicts during the reign of Saul. He knows what to expect from them militarily. And so he is terrified. But not only that, but something has happened as well that causes him to be desperate. Verse 3. Now Samuel had died, and all Israel had mourned for him and buried him in Ramah, his own city. And Saul had put the mediums and the necromancers out of the land. The Philistines assembled and came and encamped at Shunem, and Saul gathered all Israel, and they encamped at Gilboa. When Saul saw the army of the Philistines, he was afraid, and his heart trembled greatly. So you have a couple of points here. First, just a reminder from 1 Samuel chapter 25 that Samuel has died. And yes, they had their conflicts, but Saul has this very deep respect and almost kind of like a mentor mentee relationship with Samuel. And he values his opinion greatly. And now that's been taken away. And it's interesting that within the passage talking about the death of Samuel, Saul is very, very much vague. And the reason why I think that is, though, is to set this up and to show that, look, he not only is a broken man because he's acted foolishly, he's not just a broken man because he is desperate here in this moment. He's a broken man because he doesn't have anybody to turn to. He has really driven out. By the way, it's not just like they left him. He made them leave him. He has driven out so many people that could give him just sound, godly advice, whether that's Samuel, David, the priests of Nob, whoever it might be. He has driven so many, his son Jonathan, he's driven so many people around him away that it's just really sad to see the state that he is in. And so I think that's why you see this mentioned. And then the idea that he has been mourned and buried, it's just Samuel's dead. Like he's dead for sure. And so whatever happens coming up is not just like, oh, he just died an hour ago, then this happened. No, it's been days and weeks after, to the point where he has been mourned for, which was a very long time process in ancient Israel, and he's been buried as well. And so it is, this is not something that just happened right after the death of Samuel. It happened a lot longer, basically he has passed. But you have the Philistines show up. But before that, you have this very quick phrase at the end of verse 3, this quick sentence, that is referencing the fact that, again, Saul tries his best. And he is putting out mediums and necromancers, which goes back to the Old Testament law in the book of 2 places in the book of Leviticus and 1 place in the book of Deuteronomy, which makes it very clear that you are not supposed to have contact or have contact with the dead or try to have contact with the dead, specifically through mediums and necromancers. And so it's good that he's doing this, but there's still somebody still out there. But before that, you have this great fear of Saul that the Philistines are back. They're back and they're ready to go to war, and I don't think he is. And so verse 5 just really gets that point across. His heart trembling greatly, by the way. Great description of that. But then verse 6, and when Saul inquired of the Lord did not answer him, either by dreams or by Urim or by the prophets. Then Saul said to his servants, seek out for me a woman who is a medium, that I may go to her and inquire of her. And his servant said to him, behold, there is a medium at En-dor. So he does try to go to the Lord, which again would be good if he doesn't have this grand history of rejecting the Lord and refusing to do what the Lord has told him to do. And so there's no surprise that the Lord meets this request with silence. And again, I think it's interesting. It doesn't say that the Lord did not hear him. It's just the Lord did not answer him. The Lord absolutely heard the cries of Saul, but he did not answer him because God knows the state of the heart of Saul. And what a chilling reminder for sure. But it's also a great encouragement that when you and I pray, God hears our prayers. So really, I think, interesting to see. But he tries that, doesn't work. He then goes to dreams or the special revelation, and that doesn't work. And then you have a special revelation through the priests, or specifically priests from the line of Aaron, and that doesn't work, which, by the way, that makes sense because he killed a bunch of priests of the Lord at Nob. But then finally he goes to prophets, who are the mouthpieces of the Lord, and they don't tell him anything either. And so it's just, okay, I get the picture. I get the picture. And so for a desperate man, he decides, hey, I know I outlawed this thing called mediums and necromancy earlier, but if there's still an opportunity to see somebody that does this, I'm going to take it. And they do find somebody, and it's in En-dor. En-dor is not technically an Israelite city, an ancient Israelite city, but it is in the territory of, I believe, Manasseh. So, yes, it's not an Israelite city, but it's close enough to territory. So the fact that there's still a medium or a necromancer still that close to Israel says that there's still work to be done, or at least Israel should still be looking out for the fact that there's still mediums and necromancers out there. So Saul decides to go, though, to this woman and get her, not her advice, but basically have her do her thing. Verse 8, so Saul disguised himself and put on other garments and went, he and 2 men with him, and they came to the woman by night. And he said, divine for me by a spirit, and bring up for me whomever I shall name to you. The reason why he goes in disguise, probably 2 things. One, he is the king, so you do want to really just disguise his status. But then two, you have to realize that he outlawed mediums and necromancers, or did his best to, and so it would be a conflict of a personal conflict with this medium, and so that's why you want to be disguised as well. So that sets that up. Verse 9, the woman said to him, surely you know what Saul has done, how he has cut off the mediums and the necromancers from the land. Why then are you laying a trap for my life to bring about my death? But Saul swore to her by the Lord, as the Lord lives, no punishment shall come upon you for this thing. Now, it is interesting, before we get into the actual medium action there in verse 11, it is interesting that he uses as the Lord lives. That happens quite a bit in the Old Testament, right? Yes, it is an oath based on the name of the Lord, so that is foolish for sure, as we've seen in other spots of the Old Testament. But it's also this very dark, actually, request or command that Saul gives to this woman, or promise oath that Saul gives to this woman. It's basically saying, look, even though you are committing sin according to God's law, God will spare you for your sin. So it is this very backwards theology that Saul has, and we kind of touched on this a little bit with Jonah this past Wednesday, about how he described the Lord so beautifully, but his prayer was way off in Jonah chapter 4, verses 1 through 4. But here, you have this oath. Okay, nothing's going to happen to you. You'll be fine. And the reason why he can promise that oath as well is because, well, he knows that he is Saul. Verse 11. Then the woman said, whom shall I bring up for you? He said, bring up Samuel for me. When the woman saw Samuel, she cried out with a loud voice. And the woman said to Saul, why have you deceived me? You are Saul. The king said to her, do not be afraid. What do you see? And the woman said to Saul, I see a God coming up out of the earth. He said to her, what is his appearance? And she said, an old man is coming up, and he is wrapped in a robe. And Saul knew that it was Samuel, and he bowed with his face to the ground and paid homage. So you have this medium do her thing, and she gets the name of the person that's called up. It's Samuel, so she does her thing. But then all of a sudden she cries out with a loud voice, and then makes this revelation that this stranger is indeed Saul himself. Now, why did she have this cry out with a loud voice if she's a medium? There's a couple thoughts on that. First, it's the idea that she could have been just a con lady and she wasn't actually really a medium. I don't think so. I think she probably was actually a medium. However, I think the amount of work involved here to actually get Samuel to come up to give a message, I think it could have been the first time that she had done something to this level. And so that could have caused the fear. But for me, her exclamation afterwards, and the woman said to Saul, why have you deceived me? You are Saul. I think that's probably more of the anxiety and the crying out that she experiences at the beginning of verse 12. So, because she doesn't push back on Saul trying to bring up Samuel. And so, for me, I lean more towards the fact that she realizes who is in front of her, and she is worried for her own sake. Now, verse 13, I think is interesting. You have Saul being mentioned by name throughout the chapter, but then in verse 13, it says the king said to her. There's this switch, and that should make you go, oh, this is interesting. These words, do not be afraid, what do you see, have authority behind them. And I think that's why it says the king said to her instead of Saul said to her. And so it's this idea, look, I'm the king. You don't have to be afraid of this because I put you up to this. But at the same time, I'm the king. What do you see? So I think that is really just kind of an interesting observation in verse 13. Then she gives him this really kind of interesting description. I see a God coming up out of the earth. Here it's a lowercase g, and so it's this idea that they are of a different appearance than what you and I are, talking more about this idea that we will have glorified bodies in eternity. But that is for a different day. But here, I think that's probably why she describes him as thus. But he wants a little bit more of a specific description, and she says, okay, he's an old man, he's wrapped in a robe, which to Saul is this idea, and why he knows that it was Samuel is because of the way that he is being described, and then by what he says after that as well. So the description shows that he is old, which Samuel was old at the point of his passing, but he's also wrapped in a robe, which would be very common for prophets to wear. But then that is then confirmed by the speech that Samuel gives to Saul, which we'll get to now, verse 15. Then Samuel said to Saul, why have you disturbed me by bringing me up? Saul answered, I am in great distress, for the Philistines are warring against me, and God has turned away from me and answers me no more, either by prophets or by dreams. Therefore, I have summoned you to tell me what I shall do. It's just this broken man who is acting desperate. And yes, he made a good point that God has definitely turned away from him. He's not answering him anymore, but he doesn't realize it's because of the choices that you made, Saul. It's not because God is out to get you. It's because you literally refused and rejected the Lord time and time again. And he still doesn't see that clearly. Yes, he makes hints of it to David in the last couple of chapters we looked at in 24 and 26. But here he makes no mention of that. And you just go, oh, Saul, what are you doing? So I think that's, again, interesting to see. Verse 16, Samuel said, why then do you ask me, since the Lord has turned from you and become your enemy? The Lord has done to you as he spoke by me, for the Lord has torn the kingdom out of your hand and given it to your neighbor, David, because you did not obey the voice of the Lord and did not carry out his fierce wrath against Amalek. Therefore the Lord has done this thing to you this day. Moreover, the Lord will give Israel also with you into the hand of the Philistines, and tomorrow you and your sons shall be with me. The Lord will give the army of Israel also into the hand of the Philistines. So I think it's, again, the speech is reminding or trying to remind Saul that, hey, don't be surprised by the fact that the Lord is not answering you because you've rejected the Lord. And just reminding him of the time that you rejected him with the situation with Amalek. But then it goes a step further, of course, in verse 19. So with Samuel being a prophet, it makes total sense why with this speech he's going back to being a prophet again. And verse 19 shows this because he prophesies the death of Saul, but not just Saul, but Saul's sons as well. And that does come true in chapter 31. Now, some people have said that in verse 19, this phrase, and tomorrow you and your son shall be with me, is this idea that they are in heaven, or is it that they're all in this waiting period, like purgatory? First off, the purgatory idea, I don't see that at all there. But I also don't see heaven either. I think for me, what Samuel is trying to get across to Saul is that tomorrow you and your sons will be dead. You are going to be entering into eternity tomorrow. And it's just this like, oh, how do you take that? Because the Lord will give the army of Israel into the hand of the Philistines, as the end of verse 19 shows. So you've literally just been told why God's not answering you, reminding you of the time that you have failed, but then at the end of it, that you are going to be dead along with your sons. And not just like in years, but tomorrow. And just, that must have been anguishing for Saul to hear that, which, well, it was. Verse 20. Then Saul fell at once, full length on the ground, or prostrating position, filled with fear because of the words of Samuel. And there was no strength in him, for he had eaten nothing all day and all night. That idea of desperation, right? Verse 21. And the woman came to Saul, and when she saw that he was terrified, she said to him, Behold, your servant has obeyed you. I have taken my life in my hand, and have listened to what you have said to me. Now, therefore, you also obey your servant. Let me set a morsel of bread before you, and eat, that you may have strength when you go on your way. He refused and said, I will not eat. But his servants, together with the woman, urged him, and he listened to their words. So he arose from the earth and sat on the bed. Now the woman had a fattened calf in the house, and she quickly killed it, and she took flour and kneaded it, and baked unleavened bread of it. And she put it before Saul and his servants, and they ate. Then they arose and went away that night. So you have finally just uh, this last interaction between the two. And she is, yes, she is being a little bit compassionate, but at the same time, there's this idea of, you are so broken in front of me, I can barely believe that you're the king idea. So it's interesting to see a little bit of that balance between her having compassion on him while still fearing him, because he's the king, but at the same time going, look, you're kind of at my disposal. Like, you're kind of, I don't have to do this, but I'm going to, because I feel sorry for you. I pity you, basically. And so I think that's kind of interesting to see that, which then sets up this and they ate and then just went away. And setting up the last moment of Saul, in the life of Saul, which will be in chapter 31. So next week we will wrap up the life of Saul in 1 Samuel chapter 31. But thanks for spending a little bit of time with me today as we see, yes, Saul is still broken, but now he is just desperate. And just to see how sad that can be when we get desperate. And so thank you again for spending just a little time with me today. And I will see you next week as we wrap up the life of King Saul. Thanks.